Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Greg Schutz, and this is episode 22 of the 2021 podcast series, taking a look at the draft eligible prospects and getting you ready for the NFL draft. It's hard to believe, only 8 weeks away, April 29th, which leads us into a new segment for the 2021 podcast series. And I want to get the fans' perspective on things. That's right. I'm going to sit down with the fans and talk about your favorite college and pro teams. Take a look at the players from the collegiate level. Where do we see them stacking up, as it comes to the draft? What are the best fits? What are their strengths and weaknesses? See if we agree or disagree with their draft stock and where they should be coming off the board. And then we're also going to dive into your NFL teams and get a good feel for what their draft needs are. What should they be doing in free agency? And really, come draft day, what should we be expecting to see from your NFL franchises? We're also going to take a look at my mock draft, kind of break down those picks, see if we disagree or if we agree with exactly where those land. So without further ado, here's our first episode from a fan's perspective. So from a fan's perspective, today we have Brett Peters, a huge Oklahoma State fan, all things Big 12, a hater of the Big 10 conference, and a big Houston Texans fan. So we'll be able to talk a little bit more about the dumpster fire that is the Houston Texans right now. Welcome aboard, Brett. Let's go ahead and start jumping into things.
Hey, well, thanks for having me, Greg. Just to let you know, I'm a big hater of the Big Ten West. Now, I absolutely cannot stand that side of the conference. Like, do you remember when the Big 12 used to have the North and South?
Oh, yeah.
And back in the day, and then we obviously lost a few teams. And that's the problem with these sides of the conferences that I'm not a fan of, because there's not a lot of intermingling, and I know some, you have, it just works out for the Big 12 that they can play everybody. But I feel like I'm not a big fan of having to play, I know there's rivalries and things and, but anymore, I'm not a huge fan of having to play the same side or the same teams over and over and over again when there's other teams in the conference that would make for more games, especially in the Big Ten, more games that would be interesting to watch for the fans, like Wisconsin versus Penn State, or Wisconsin versus a Michigan or an Ohio State, more than just the championship game. And I know they don't play every year, but the things like that, instead of watching Wisconsin versus Northwestern or Wisconsin versus Indiana every year, mix it up. I don't like these West, and I'll get off my soapbox, but I don't like the West because it's too dumpster fire-ish after Wisconsin to me. I know Northwestern had a good year, but to me it's Wisconsin's year after year, and Minnesota sneaks in there, but it's always Wisconsin year after year, in my opinion. Except for a random here or there.
And I guess you look at it, you've got Ohio State, you've got Michigan, you've got Michigan State, you've got Penn State, all in the same division. And I think the flip side to it, you look at the Big 12, and now that they have their group and their teams, everyone plays everyone. And I know based on the numbers, you can't do that physically in the Big 10, but at least you've got the two best teams at the end duking it out, as opposed to Wisconsin versus fill in the blank every single year.
Absolutely, yeah, and even in the Pac-12, I feel like it's more balanced on both sides. Like, where you have USC and you'll have Arizona State, or we'll have a Utah. Yeah, Utah, and then Oregon and Stanford and Washington, even Washington State, like I feel like that's more balanced than what I look at the Big Ten West or something like that. Or even let's just go crazy, the SEC West, I believe, right? Or is it SEC West, or is it East, or is it North? I think they're the East, SEC East, right, with the Florida and the, So I'm sorry, I don't want to get that mixed up, but SEC East with Florida, Missouri, Kentucky, Georgia. It's Georgia and Florida's to lose. You have Kentucky, Vanderbilt, teams like that. I mean, come on, you know what I mean? Like, you don't, it's always the same thing. Like then you go to the other side of the SEC and you have the big dogs. So
Well,
it's like,
and
I was always like, why have that?
if you were to look at it from a like the draft perspective as well, when you're talking about the Big Ten conference, where are all your draft picks coming from? It's coming from your Ohio States and your Michigans and your Penn States. Wisconsin. This year they're a little bit younger. They only have a couple of guys that'll probably get drafted. But you're going to get a couple guys from Minnesota, a couple guys here and there from Purdue, like Rondale Moore, their receiver. And I think when you look at even with the SEC, you've got Georgia and Florida, and then really just a couple sprinkled in from all the other. And then you go over to the other side. There's Bama and LSU and all the big dogs over there, like you were saying in the SEC. So it kind of you even see that from a draft standpoint as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Guaranteed that the teams that load up every year, Alabama, Georgia's, the Clemson's, all of the Ohio States, they're going to be heavily favored in the draft year after year. I mean, I'll even throw the reloading teams like Big 12, like Oklahoma in there, and but you'll have those specific teams that every year are just going to reload, and that's what a lot of teams are going to draft. But to me, that's the thing is like some of those teams, like you can't really and that hurts them in the NFL because you don't. I want to see a Wisconsin offensive line versus that's primarily their big draft heavy and offensive linemen is their. I want to see them guard a Chase Young or somebody that comes from the Ohio State defensive line or somebody like that or let's go the Osei from Texas coming off the defensive end for I want to see those guys play the big boys, and I want to see those guys play in big games and play against the NFL caliber talent. A lot of times 3/4 of their games you just it's hard for an organization to really get a grasp because when Wisconsin's playing a bad bowl game, they have a couple bad losses and they're playing a bad bowl game and you don't really get a full body of work. They're not in the championship game, or some teams like you, so you're playing like, I don't know how many big time games Wisconsin play, but I would maybe 1, 2, maybe. And, so you don't have an idea. Like when you're going into, even like Florida, like when you see like Trask, or somebody like on the quarterback position or that's somebody that could find themselves in the NFL at some point. And I mean which round's up for grabs, but I mean obviously he was hyped up. I mean he doesn't get a full body of work like the Alabamas or the LSU's or and forgive me, it escapes me the I shouldn't the Alabama quarterback, but yeah, Mac Jones, yep. And I mean, so he gets to showcase every week against top defenses, and then so it's people like that can really up their draft status, against good teams. And then one bad game, if Mac Jones even had a, kind of a decent off game, like it doesn't hurt him as bad as when somebody has their one showdown game and then you have a bad game, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Because a lot of times that's what happens is they're going to point to like Kyle Trask against Oklahoma. I mean, you saw in the bowl game, he throws 3 interceptions, just right there, in basically almost in a row. And he was exposed with his arm strength and a lot of other things there. And that's what people are going to come back to. Forget the fact that he threw for over 4,200 yards against these other programs. He went against, an OU defense that was peaking at the right time. Ronnie Perkins changed that whole defense around when he came in from the suspension. And suddenly Kyle Trask, that's the last thing you're going to remember is Kyle Trask doing that. And how many big time games did Kyle Trask really have? And I know everyone's going to say it's the SEC, but how many games did he really have to showcase exactly what he could do against elite talent? You can't tell me that, the 11 that Kentucky rolls out every single week is elite talent that he'd be facing at the next level. OU, he went up against a top caliber defense on the last half of second half of the season. OU was elite, in my opinion, in terms of how they were playing down the stretch. And you saw exactly what happens to Kyle Trask when he gets into under pressure versus a Mac Jones. he had to be on top of his game going against, talent each and every week in his division, because if he didn't, they'd be in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, like and it's not like you hear the things from the the perspective on the OU Florida game, where you have the initial hype up from the Florida Gators talking about that they're going to come in and dominate their SEC, and then you have a Kyle Trask that I think he had, if I memory serves me correctly, Greg, he had like a 25 quarterback rating. I think he was like over. He had 3 picks, and you have Spencer Rattler, a freshman, right, coming in and just absolutely dominating with 3 touchdowns, and it didn't even have to throw the ball that much,
Yeah.
and you're hearing Florida blame that the receivers, and I get that makes a difference. So I give credit to that, but at the end of the day, you can't tell me Florida does not have a ton of decent receivers that where you can throw the ball to and at least get garbage time. I mean, they had to win. I don't even know, when did they take Kyle Trask out? Was it the whole fourth quarter? But put somebody else in. I don't know if they put Emory Jones in. I think that's who it was. And then and they put him in. And I mean, Trask, yeah, he definitely didn't showcase himself, and he made a freshman, who, let's just be honest, I mean, was playing his best football, the whole OU team playing their best football at the end of the year. If it wasn't for a few slip ups, in the beginning of the season, especially the Iowa State game, where things didn't go their way, OU is looking has a good chance at the playoffs. So it's yeah, and OU has a lot to play for. There's pride on the line. They're tired of hearing about the SEC, and they haven't done well, and that's what killed them, is their first round of the playoffs in the last few years, and so it was good for OU, and I think OU's already back on their radar, probably be a heavy favorite next year. But obviously they lose, I think, one of the best offensive linemen that they've had in some recent memory, and he'll be an early round pick. There's no question about it. Yeah, Creed Humphrey, and it's hard to replace 6'5", 340 or 330. I don't know what maybe it's around there, but but if any team could do it, OU will.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think is crazy about Creed Humphrey was, this was a guy as a freshman was on the top O-line in the country. That's where they had Orlando Brown, they had Cody Ford, Ben Powers, Drew Samia. All those guys got drafted and were playing in the league now. And so then as a sophomore, he now has to flip the script, and now I'm the veteran on this line, and yet again, they have, they produce with, Jalen Hurts. And it was one of those things, I look at it and, okay, you're there as the center and a redshirt freshman. Then you take over for Jalen Hurts, and you're teaching this other group. I mean, come on, this guy should be a plug and play center. Probably starting. I've got him going to the Steelers in round 2 now that Marquise Pouncey's retired, and I think they can plug him in and he can play for a decade.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what's he, probably the 3rd or 4th best lineman in the draft, and the Steelers outside of if they can, I think Roethlisberger didn't he take a cut to save them some of the cap money or whatever, and then so that's going to be a big help, and the Steelers are going to be good. It's just a matter of, like you said, protecting Roethlisberger, keeping him healthy, and so I like that pick in the 2nd round. They're already, I think, just a shade below the cap, so they have a little bit of money to work with, but I like that pick because they still have a lot of weapons. I think James Conner to produce at a high level, and then
here's the thing with Conner. He's a free agent, and so I'm wondering if he's going to be back. I actually have the Steelers taking. You're talking about Alabama. I have them taking Najee Harris. Najee could come off the board, I think, as high as 18 to the Dolphins. but I've got him going off the board, number 24, to the Steelers. Give them a 3-down back, a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield, has the power, has the speed. Dude hurdled Nick McLeod there at Notre Dame and jumped over that guy and on his way down the field. And he can pass protect. That is something that I think they really need, is that 3-down back. Connor wasn't much of a threat out of the backfield. They need a new Le'Veon Bell, and I think Najee Harris could be that guy.
Yeah, as I'm looking at, you're wondering when you look at the draft order, you see, I think the Steelers sitting around 24, something like that right now in the draft. And, obviously I don't see, I see that pretty much being that pick probably being available then, I'm trying, you'll probably see some movement, with like my Texans with Deshaun Watson and even Russell Wilson maybe on the move, with different teams, and you see things like that as a possibility, So I don't know what the Steelers might just be sitting pretty, and hoping for the best, because they're like I said, I don't see. I'm trying to think of a team in the head of them that would be that would take him over that before that pick. So.
Maybe the Jets. Frank Gore, I think is close to 40. I think Frank Gore's days are numbered. I think really the Jets and Miami, because Miami right now they have Myles Gaskin and Salman Ahmed are their top 2 running backs right now. So they definitely need some help. But it's a good segue going to your Texans. What in the world is going on here? I mean, they trade. I know that was a Bill O'Brien deal, but they trade DeAndre Hopkins. Now this year, J.J. Watt's now in Arizona. They cut their center, Nick Martin, who was arguably their best offensive lineman. But yet they've got Deshaun Watson. They're holding him hostage right now. What do you make of what's going on from a fan's perspective? What do you make of what's going on with your Texans?
It's just it's a classic. You didn't let your superstar make any decisions. You have Deshaun Watson, who wants to be a part of picking coaches and picking players, and this is a guy that you just extended on a contract, and now you have your whole organization in disarray because you didn't get his input on anything. You have, I think, and like you said, you're talking about the Jets. That's still probably a play for Watson too, because he's a good relationship with the coach there now, and. That's what happens. You have the whole thing falls apart when your leader falls apart. The rest of the cards crumble down because your base is gone, and now you have a whole rebuild. And there's no doubt in my mind that Watson will be gone. It's just who's going to pay the piper. You're in good position right now with Houston. To get some good big time draft picks. I'm happy. I would like to make a deal. It hurts the Texans that Russell Wilson's out now a little bit to me. Instead of being the only fish in the sea, you now have Russell Wilson. That is a possibility. Luckily for Houston, Russell Wilson has set teams, but Watson kind of does too. But I at this point, I would love to just cut ties and let Watson make a deal, get the best deal you can, and just start over and try to rebuild the the relationship you have with the city and a new quarterback, and just go from there.
What's interesting, the Lions and Rams already set the bar with the with Stafford and the trade with Stafford, 2 firsts and a third in order to bring Stafford through. So now you've got Deshaun Watson, who's considerably younger. He's 25, I think, and Stafford is in his 30s. And Watson, yes, he has the ACL tear, but outside of that, he's been pretty healthy. And I think like you said, you're going to have to pay the piper, pay that king's ransom, and in order to get your quarterback. I wonder if how that's all going to play out. Who's ultimately going to come knocking on the door, and who's ultimately going to be under center, because Houston traded away their first round pick for Laramie Tunsil. Then they traded away their second round pick as well. So now they're sitting there in the third round. You're not going to basically your top quarterback that's going to be available is going to be Kyle Trask in round 3. And I don't think Houston wants to roll the dice with Kyle Trask. So it'll be interesting to see how they play this out. Maybe they get a 1 year rental on a guy like Andy Dalton or something like that, and then and maybe even Sam Darnold for 1 year. And depending on how things shape up, maybe look at getting a quarterback in next year's draft.
Yeah, to me, it is a I like the idea of like a Mitchell Trubisky year, and and just dumping him at the end of the year. Because I think the Bears. I mean, the Bears seem to have their sights more on Russell Wilson, I think, but at this point, but I would obviously you can't trade him in division. You have the best case scenario would go to the NFC. I am an absolute like and I don't know if they would ever do this because it's the same state, but I'm an absolute fan of a Dallas Cowboys trade. Like I would love to see Dak Prescott come to Houston with some picks, and let's take a chance on that, because I'm not the biggest Dak Prescott fan, but to me, Jerry Jones is one of those managers or or owners, excuse me, that would be a if you dangle the third best, fourth best quarterback statistically in the NFL in front of him when his quarterback suffered a horrific knee injury, like it would be hard for him to avoid eating that carrot or chasing that carrot. I mean, but what is and I think the Cowboys they have the ability, to make these. I mean, I think they're well in tune cap space wise. I believe, if my understanding is right, I think they have a decent amount of space, especially with the trades. Especially how much they were going to offer, and were turned down by, Dak Prescott. And I think the Texans can, make a play for that, but it wouldn't surprise me if they made some deal with New York Jets or Carolina or somebody along those lines too. But I would like to. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see a Dallas Cowboy trade personally, or I guess the Bears maybe would be my second.
I mean, they've also restructured the David Johnson's contract, so he'll be back. But then you've got Will Fuller, your receiver. He's a free agent. Do you bring him back? Your corners, both Garyon Conley, Vernon Hargraves, they're both free agents. So it's going to be interesting to see who they can bring back. And frankly, in the free agency right now, who's going to want to come to Houston? You've got all of your stars within that organization leaving, wanting out. JJ asked for his release, and DeAndre Hopkins gets traded. But then you have Deshaun Watson saying he's never going to play in Houston again. So, I think from that standpoint, David Culley, your new head coach, he's got his work cut out for him.
Yeah, especially with the to me it was more unforeseen, the unforeseen play of the Colts and the Titans out there, and the Jags are Trevor Lawrence is going to be in a Jags uniform. I think probably likely can see that happening. I'd be kind of shocked if it wasn't the case, but so now you're going to have some big time names, in the division. And clearly, it's from perennial winning the division and at least getting into the playoffs and hosting a game to you could be in the last place next year instantly. And so and we don't have, and the Dolphins have the draft pick this year. So what do? You have to kind of try to just tread water until some of this stuff resurfaces, and you forget. It's almost like a statute of limitations on this thing. You have to kind of play it out, and forget about some NBA teams just got to tread water with some basic, veterans or on league minimums and things like that until they can trade them for better players. And is that what you do? Can you play some people out and get trades before the trade deadline and make things happen? And I think that's kind of where the Texans are going to be positioned to do is, they're not going to win a lot of games. You make the best deals and can you have a good future by continuing to have that statute of limitations pass where you forget about the Deshaun Watson, you move past all that, you forget about DeAndre Hopkins, you forget about JJ Watt, and and it's a short memory in the NFL. It's a very
What
short
have you done
memory
for
in the
me
NFL.
lately?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be one of those things that, what can you, when you look at like a team like the Patriots, and yeah, I mean, I don't, you have probably a 50-50. Were they happy that Tom Brady won the Super Bowl? I don't know if it's 50-50. They're probably, but after this year, you have that one honeymoon year where you're like, yeah, it was cool to see Tom Brady do well, and we still love him. But to me, after this year, if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm done. I'm like, let's get this thing kick-started and do it the right way, and I move past Tom Brady. So but that the Texans are going to have to do things like that. Just kind of forget about all of that and with the past. They didn't win anything, nor to the extent of the Patriots. So it should be a little bit easier, But it's one of those things that you got make the best trade you can for Deshaun Watson now. Get him out, and start rebuilding, and I think that starts, that'll start before the kickoff next year for sure.
So, should we be concerned at all? I know David Culley. He's been a coach in the league a long time. An assistant head coach there in Baltimore, but he was also the wide receiver coach, and outside of Marquise Brown, you had some tight end play there with Mark Andrews, but outside of Marquise Brown, the receivers really struggled. They had to bring in Dez Bryant to get any production at the receiver position. He was also their passing game coordinator, and the Ravens finished dead last in the league in passing. Now, I know that they also were first in the league in rushing, but there really wasn't a ton of balance with that offense. I may be looking too much into this, but should we be concerned at all that Houston essentially is bringing in a guy who was the passing game coordinator of the league's first passing offense?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was completely surprised by the hire.
With Eric Bieniemy out there.
Yes, absolutely. And when you look at somebody like Eric Bieniemy from, I think, Kansas City, right? So it's a stupid decision that Houston would not at least they might have seriously considered him, but to me, what's the you have a guy that's coached a Patrick Mahomes, right? And you have and he comes from a good coach in Andy Reid, and runs a high-powered offense. Now, granted, obviously the players have something to do with it, but you still have to put those players in position to make plays. The Texans had a similar situation. Like, you had Deshaun Watson, who's a mobile quarterback, can sling the rock. You had, Will Fuller, and I'd even say go back in time to DeAndre Hopkins. It's almost scary to how close to the Chiefs they could have been, and
Brandon Cooks now.
Brandon Cooks, yeah, and I would, if not him, I mean, you still have a bunch of other coaches out there that make way more sense than what was just like. I like Aaron Glenn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like things I like what he did in New Orleans, and to me, I mean, you could even take a run at the college ranks, even. Where was. I mean, I don't know. Could we had a shot at Urban Meyer? Are we in better position than Jacksonville, or even somebody like Lincoln Riley, or he's got a gold mine. Would he leave? I don't know, but I mean, you never know, because to me, the NFL is the cream of the crop if you're a coach, and that's where you aspire to be a head coach. I know some people are happy in college and they're gods there, and but let's be honest, Lincoln Riley, he's in a tough situation because he's won a lot of great games, but he hasn't won a national championship. But he's still revered as a high coach, and a high sought after coach, because he does win a lot of games. But it's how you perform at the Big East. So is his market at a peak now? And does his market go down? And would he have been able to pull you know, an, excuse me, the Arizona coach Kingsbury? Would he have had something? Is it what would make him any less more appealing than a Kingsbury? And so that might have had a run at him, but yeah, way more better options than who the Texans have right now.
Well, it's interesting when you look at the college ranks and you see what Kingsbury, Arizona just out of the playoffs, but you look at Matt Rule and he rebuilt Temple and then he moves on to Baylor and he rebuilds Baylor and he has the NFL ties. He was a coach there. Before that he had played in the league a little bit, and he's known for rebuilding programs. And he was at Baylor for just a couple of years before he takes the job in Carolina. But I like what he's doing so far in Carolina in terms of the moves that he's making. He stays true to his draft board. And I think he's building something there, the culture and everything. So that's one of the guys, that's one of the things that you always have to take a look at and be mindful of is just because they're a good college coach doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a good pro coach and vice versa. I mean, we saw that with Nick Saban. He was not a good pro coach. But some of those other guys, I think jury obviously is still going to be out with Matt Rule, right now, but I think he's trending in the right direction. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how all of that plays out. But my draft, basically looking at my draft board, trying to figure out how the Texans would potentially make their picks, and I've got their top 4 picks here. And unfortunately, it's not first through fourth. You're looking at a third, 2/4, and a fifth. But wanted to run these by you, see what you thought. I'm looking at first pick there in the third round. It's at the top of round 3. J.J. Watt obviously is gone. I'm looking at Jay Tufele out of USC. He's a 6'3", 305. Could potentially be a 5 technique taking over for J.J. Watt there. I think you have to address that defense. Offensively, you can potentially look at a receiver, but I think Tufele to me makes a lot of sense there in the third. You look at the fourth round, there are 2 picks. I've got him taking an outside linebacker, get some more pass rush help there. The kid out of UAB, Jordan Smith, he's got some length to him. He's about 6'6", 250, and can bend coming off the edge. And then again, they could potentially go receiver, but I think with all those receivers out there, Kenny Golladay and Juju Smith-Schuster, guys in free agency, I think they target receivers there. And so I've got their second, 4th round pick, Kylan Hill, the running back out of Mississippi State. And the reason why I liked him to kind of pair with David Johnson is this was a guy rushed for like 1,200 yards as a junior. Then Mike Leach comes in, throws in the air raid offense, and in 3 games, he had 23 catches. So he knows, he's a guy that can catch the football out of the backfield. So you get the quarterback a weapon. You address some of the needs on defense first. You get a weapon there at the running back position there in the 4th round. What do you think? Where do you think that the Texans are going to go? Do you think that's off base? Do you think they look to really try to shore up that offense a little bit more? I think your offensive line outside of the center is pretty much set. Do you tackle a receiver? Do you go after a tight end, or do you try to shore up that defense up front?
I think you got to go with a tackle, and to me, that's where you start. And like I said, I agree. I think that's something that could be could be available for USC. Obviously, I think cornerback is a big position that we need to fill, because the defense has absolutely been getting decimated by a lot of the good quarterbacks. When you see the Texans play and give up big leads and things like that. But yeah, there's no question. It goes defense first, cornerback, defensive line, and then I think you go wide out. Running back, I'm not so sure about, at this point, but I would absolutely like to see. I don't know what's his name for Alabama, if he's available, Barmore, if that's something where he's in line, but or if he would be gobbled up by then. But as far as something like that, we have some Big 12 players. Blacklock, I think, is that his name for TCU?
He's that pass rusher there in the middle for you.
Yep. Yep. And and because I think the quarterback situation will resolve itself via trade or free agency. So, I like we have, what do we got? A free agent. We got Tyrod Taylor out there. We got Trubisky out there probably. The Jags are, I mean, what's his name for the Jags? Oh my gosh, I keep forgetting. Super Bowl champion guy that,
Nick
for the Eagles.
Foles.
Nick Foles still out there. I mean, there's all sorts of people. Dak's still a potential, like a dark horse, all sorts of, people that could fill in a hole at quarterback. So, I, I like getting the defense going, and let's starting with that, and just see what happens because, I think, I mean, I think you almost have to try to get Will Fuller on board. He's been injury prone, but I 100% agree that the defensive tackle position is where it's at, but cornerback would be a close second.
Yeah, and I actually looking at value, and I think that's probably why I was looking at Jordan Smith, a guy who a lot of people have coming off the board sometime on day two. I was thinking early day three, get a pass rusher because I think Whitney Merciless needs some help. Brendan Scarlett, he's a free agent on the other side, but he wasn't much of a pass rusher. So get another guy to help Whitney Merciless out. And then I was looking in the fifth round. There's a corner out of Washington, Keith Taylor. He's 6'3", 196 pounds. So he's got good length and a guy who I think has some decent ball skills as well. So, that's the thing that's going to be tricky about Houston this year is maybe they try to trade up into the draft, and secure some, a pickup that way. But they've already traded away a lot of their draft capital. So they're going to have to be really smart in the draft with who they target, and looking for some of the guys, someone who might fall to them, like a Jordan Smith may fall into their lap. Keith Taylor is another guy who could potentially come off the board in round number 4. So if he falls to round 5, that'd be a perfect corner for them. So that was just kind of how I was playing things out of my head, what that looks like for Houston. But looking at your Oklahoma State Cowboys, talk to me about Chuba Hubbard. Where do you see him coming off the board? Because he's one of those guys. Either you love him or you hate him. As a Pokes fan, where do you stand on Chuba Hubbard?
Oh my gosh, he's he is a first rounder, not or a second round pick. Like you can't look at what happened this year to me and know what you're getting with Chuba Hubbard. His heart wasn't in this year. You had the off the field issues, with the Mike Gundy shirt, and there's a lot of trust there, and he was obviously playing not to get hurt, and which sometimes could get you hurt, but and Gundy knew it. Gundy knew that, especially after you lost a few games, when you lost to that close one to Texas, and I think it was overtime, and you go and you get blown out by Oklahoma. I don't even think he played in the Oklahoma game, that, if at all. And you have, or if not, or much, but you have, you think you have a guy that is an Olympic speed back, and teams would kill for that speed. I think you get him out of the backfield, and there's not a lot of running backs that can have that type of. It's not so much the speed; it's the acceleration that people like. You see Tyreek Hill, if he catches the ball on a wide receiver screen, how quick he accelerates and just blows past everybody. And or even a Alvin Kamara, somebody like that. You can just tell these people are special. When they're catching the ball and moving. And to me, like the Miami Dolphins would be stupid, to not have somebody like that in their backfield. And I would even say that the Dallas Cowboys have a some sort of opportunity, because let's be honest, Ezekiel Elliott did nothing. And you have, they have the other guy, forgive me, I forgot his name, but that filled in for, and had a decent year.
Tony Pollard?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, correct. But when you look at somebody like if the Cowboys teamed up somebody like that, that could catch in space and just accelerate and have, you're, in those rounds, or even, like, I mean, if he fell to the second round, he's a steal at that point to me.
Here's this. If he falls to round 3 and Houston's on the clock with the third pick in round number 3, do you take him?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you have to. Like, I mean, you have, because David Johnson doesn't have those wheels. And so you have somebody that, like, a screen pass can turn into a touchdown. You have somebody that can, break, take a pitch, a sweep, and take it the distance. He has great change of direction. You just have to, you obviously want to be careful with him, but you can't, you got to get him in space, and that'll take pressure off the Texans quarterback while they get accustomed to things. That'll take pressure off, overall the wide receiving core, because now you have people looking into the backfield, focusing on that. They never had to do that with Houston, ever. I don't even remember the last time the Texans had a running back that was explosive. And so, I mean, if you could think of one, let me know. But I can't sit here and even, Arian Foster is the only guy that comes to mind that has even a close inclination of, of almost a parallel to him. But even Chuba Hubbard's faster than him. So
we got a couple of minutes left. I'm going to give you a couple of other names real quick. Tylan Wallace, your receiver, your tackle, Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah, I think right now, Tylan Wallace, you're probably looking at, he's a top 5 wideout. Height's going to hurt him. You have, he has not played a lot of slot receiving. He's always lined up at the outside, and in the Big 12 conference, and that's a big hurting factor. Even though the Big 12 was up this year in defense, from what they've used to be, you have that just not as good. Like, the defense isn't as good as a lot of conferences, and the competition's not as good. And and Tylan had a lot of big games versus a lot of lower tier opponents. But he is, like, you throw him the ball, he's going to go up and get it. And, and that's the kind of, he's a good possession receiver. He's going to make the tough catches. I like I said, I like him in the second, third round, to a team that could, like, again, I keep going back, to some of these teams, but, I'm looking at teams like the San Francisco 49ers, or the, even like, a Dallas Cowboys, I keep going back to them, but when I see teams
I've got them going off the board to Washington in round 2. I think Washington has Terry McLaurin. They need other receivers, and he just ran a sub 4.40 at his pro day, or the Exos Combine, I think. But he ran a sub 4.4. So I mean, vertically, he can stretch the defenses a little bit more for Washington. Washington needs another receiver to help out McLaurin. I think that makes some sense there too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, with Scary Terry and somebody like, if you have Wallace opposite side of him, or even in the slot, to take the pressure off of the, may make the, not shade so much over to Scary Terry. I think that's a great pick. I think Washington would be good. It's just a matter of, is the quarterback position good enough there?
Yeah, Jenkins, your tackle, seems like he's one of the more physical guys in this draft.
Yeah, when you think of Oklahoma State football, let's be honest, you do not think of the offensive line. You think of high-powered, quick offenses, wide receivers, quarterbacks, running backs. And the biggest problem with the Oklahoma State Cowboys is the offensive line. It's always been the offensive line. And, for somebody like, like an offensive lineman in a right tackle position, he was the one side you could trust to not put pressure on Spencer Sanders, right? So you have, and he went up of a lot of good positions, and every time if you watch Oklahoma State, it was the left tackle, having the problems, or the left guard, and they always had to switch because we had injuries, and but the right tackle position was always secure, and I think he's a guy you could even move around, so for somebody that's 6'6", 320, and you're talking about a guy that's a 3-star recruit to become, that just goes to show you how good that guy is and how hard he's worked. And so I agree. I think that's, if you can get somebody that's 6'6", 320, mobile, used to playing in spread out offenses, and could block and could solo block people, I think, I could see him, like I said, I could see him going, easily before round 5. So
I actually have him, I have him coming off the board in round 1, and it may be a little bit too rich right now, but I was trying to figure out the best, I'm looking at the Bills. They need to protect their investment. They need to protect Josh Allen. I'm looking at Josh Allen, and they've got, Daryl Williams, a right tackle. He's a free agent. He may not be back. They're going to need a right tackle. And, they're also eyeing a couple of linebackers, but, in my opinion, you get a guy who's physical for the run game, a guy that's going to protect Josh Allen, a guy who's also versatile. To me, why not get him, if you can, in round number 1? This is a draft that's so deep on offensive line help as well for a change that, it makes some sense. He may come off the board later than that, but, for me, he's one of those guys. He's one of the more physical players in this draft up front. So that was kind of where I have him going.
Yeah, the problem with that is you have probably two offensive linemen in the Big 12 that are better than him. You have the entire, Alabama, the offensive lineman. You have Clemson offensive lineman. You have USC's offensive lineman, I think Tucker. And, you also have a lot of the Big Ten, who's built on offensive line. Then you have Sewell in Oregon, right? So you have a plethora of players that play high end, high out competition. It's hard for me to think that they would take a waiver on Oklahoma State lineman just because there's so many other big possibilities. I think I would take, like I said, I have him before the 5th round, but and it might be a heavy offensive line draft, but I think, when you look at all those, when you see, he's not as showcased as much as these Alabama, Clemson offensive linemen, Oklahoma offensive linemen, Oregon offensive linemen, and it's going to be, the Big Ten's always big an offensive line mill. So I like him, and he's done great, but I agree. It's tough to, I would love to see that, but to me that's a little far off. But just because of the amount of competition he has in the draft.
Let me ask you defensively. Rodarius Williams, he's Greedy Williams' brother. It seems like he's been there at Oklahoma State for forever now. But to me, he was one of those corners that could lock down one side and basically just take away that option for opposing quarterbacks. What are your thoughts on Williams? I think he's one of the more underrated corners that nobody's talking about.
When he and AJ Green play, Oklahoma State's defense did a 180 for the better part of last year, and that was 100% Rodarius Williams. Like with him and Malcolm Rodriguez in there making plays, and making tackles. It wasn't so much that he had a lot of pass breakups, but what made him great is the fact that he's a guy that when his receiver caught the ball, he's immediately tackled, or he breaks the pass up. But that's something that Oklahoma State struggles with, was tackling. That's Big 12 football. You have to play the position, catching and tackle them. And like, you see like a lot of plays where, and especially with Oklahoma State, they'd catch the ball and they'd turn a 3-yard gain into a 40-yard gain. It's insane. But like this year, the Oklahoma State Cowboys tackled, and if you watch a lot of their games, especially even a Texas game, even they lost that game, you know, they made Texas punt a lot, and it was because the defense and him, they just shut down, and didn't let Sam Eckler have anybody to throw to, and he's able to make those plays. He's like when you're talking about a defense that shedded, I think, shedded about a touchdown off of their allowed points per game. That's incredible, and that has to do with him in the secondary. So I think, if anybody, if a cornerback's able to make that big of a difference, and he start all 3 games or all 13 games, excuse me, and remain healthy, get tackles for loss, rush the quarterback off the edge. You got a guy. I mean, that in the Big 12, then that's the premier conference for secondaries to stop passes. You have great quarterbacks all the way around. Most of the time, they're not run heavy.
Where do you think he comes off the board?
I mean, I to me, I don't see him falling anywhere after round 3. Personally,
Yeah,
I just don't.
I've got him late round 2. I think the Packers could go with the corner in round 1, but I think if they wait until round 2, Kenny King is gone. They need a corner with Jair Alexander there in Green Bay, and I think he'd be a nice fit. Think about that, a cornerback duo of Jair Alexander and Rodarius Williams. To me, that's what you need in Green Bay to really make that next leap. If you want to beat the Tom Brady's, Drew Brees may very well retire, but even the Russell Wilsons, things like that, if they really want to take that game, take them back to the Super Bowl, they're going to have some really nice secondary play. And if you get Alexander and Rodarius Williams out on an island on either side, that to me just feels like the right fit.
Yeah, the only thing worry about with him is the but I kind of look at this 2 different ways: is the lack of interceptions. But what you see is maybe they're not throwing his way either. So you have to kind of look at that. But a lot of the top, if you look at the stats, and a lot of the top cornerbacks, they don't have a lot of interceptions because nobody's throwing it that way.
They just blanket coverage.
Absolutely, yeah. They're staying with their guy. They're not, the quarterbacks know, because they scout. Obviously, they know where it's not a wise idea to throw the ball, and he's one of those top 10 guys. So I think it's, but to me, he's the best quarterback in the Big 12. There's no question about it. And he's up there with, he's up there with, any I just, one guy, obviously Surtain comes to mind. To me, he's up there with them, and I know he's not going to be picked as high as him, but like what people don't understand is like the SEC is not as pass heavy as the Big 12, and the SEC, they're focusing on the run, and and they have a lot of big offensive linemen, and you have good NFL talent around, but you're talking about a conference that's getting thrown. It's a throw to consistently. It's day in and day out. You're week in and week out. You're going to see 40, 50 passes.
Well, I feel good talking to someone who knows a lot about the Texans and Oklahoma State. That my evaluations on the most part, were pretty darn close to we agreed on most of the topics. So, I feel pretty good about my evaluation there. But before we wrap things up, is there anything else with regard to the draft that you've got your eye on, or any guys that either are under the radar, or maybe some guys that may be a little overrated for your liking before we sign off?
Yeah, I really, the one thing I really like is I would really like to see somebody take a flyer on a Sam Ellinger, and give that guy a shot. People, he's one of those guys to me, and I'm talking to New Orleans Saints here. He's one of those guys that he's just a winner. Like, and he's only going to get better. Like, and I know that, and he's mobile enough to extend plays. And when I see players like that, obviously, when you look at like he's like a Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray coming from the Big 12, or even Spencer Rattler as a freshman now. Is he going to be on that elite level? No, but like I would with somebody like an NFL quarterback coach working with that guy, and a few years holding the clipboard, and just you never know. And like that's why I think he's not going to be expensive. The Saints have no money at all. I think they're dead last in cap. Like they're just toast. You have Jameis Winston. Never know what's going to happen with that guy. And I would love to see him out there. He almost kind of reminds me, never in the same category, but he almost kind of reminds me of a Drew Brees type of quarterback, just with, a lot of work to do. I would like to see him, as a Big 12 guy. I know I like him. I like him in the NFL better than I like the Iowa State quarterback.
Purdy.
I really do. Purdy. And I've seen them both a lot. And, it's to me, it's one of those things that, just why not? Like what else you got to do if you're New Orleans, and if you can't afford anybody, can you even name the Saints backup now?
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, but is he a day in a day out starter?
No, he's not. Here's the thing that I'm looking at with Ellinger, because I think he does need a lot of work as a passer. I mean, look at that OU game. The Red River rivalry, the shootout there, and in overtime, that throw that ultimately cost him the game. I mean, that was an ugly throw, overthrew his receiver, and that's the thing that he needs to cut down on. And I think that's the part that, like you said, the team will have to take a flyer on him late, or potentially even as an undrafted free agent. But the thing that I really like about him, because I've seen Blake Bell come to the league and become a tight end, but I can see with Sam Ellinger, at least starting out, you can still develop him as a quarterback, but why can't he be another version of Taysom Hill? Because he is such he's a physical guy. He loves contact. He's 230 pounds. I think he's caught 9 passes in his career for Texas. You could have him either as a receiver, as a tight end, whatever you want him to do. Bring him in there, give him a package, and be one of those guys like that. I mean, obviously, Jalen Hurts, what he was able to do. And I'm not saying that Sam Ellinger is necessarily on the same caliber of Jalen Hurts, but Jalen was able to come in and really kind of assert himself as a quarterback. Maybe Ellinger is able to do that, but if he does show that, hey, he needs some work, I still think he's a good enough athlete to get him out on the field. Let him be a Taysom Hill. I don't know. I mean, that's what do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. Like and interchange him even. If he's in round 7, and the Saints have a pick in round 7, and they haven't picked a quarterback yet, to me, it's a no-brainer. I would give him a shot. Like he's the ultimate long shot. The guy is going to do everything right. And, he's going to, and to me, like you have a proven guy that's played big time games. Yeah. Like, the Red River rivalry is that's an elite game. There's a lot of factors that go into that game. He made some good plays in that game, but and it's one of those games, I believe, that anything can happen at any random time. But like, he's brought teams back. He brought from the brink of nothing in those games and come all the way back and almost won the damn thing. So it's like, and if you see him, and like he had when he played Georgia, I don't know if Georgia's heart was in that bowl game or whatever, but I mean, how bad was they torched him? He had and it was, so it was it's one of those guys that, I think if he's in a late day 3 guy, I to me, I would like to see a team give him a shot. I would love to follow that and see how that develops.
All right. So I think we're about out of time, but I know that people can follow you on Twitter and your Twitch handle. Is it at Kooky Kookaburra?
Yep, Kooky Kookaburra at Twitch and Twitter. And like I said, we do a lot of kind of fun stuff, with our simulation leagues. We simulate college football, we simulate Madden, we simulate boxing. We do all sorts of fun stuff for our followers and subscribers. We're now, we're building the channel. We're now almost close to 1,500 followers. So we're, it's a lot of fun. And then obviously we have our SSL simulation league that basically is kind of what I talked about, and a lot of people like doing that, especially during the COVID time, like getting their guy on the field and watching what he does. So, or in the ring for that matter. So it's a good time. So it's we look forward to doing that every week.
Right on. So yeah, if we haven't already gotten to check it out, definitely check that out. Again, at Kooky Kookaburra. That's Kooky with the K and Kookaburra with the K. Make sure you check that out. Brett Peters. Brett, this was fun. We'll have to do this again as we get closer to the draft. Obviously we have free agency. We'll have to see what Houston does. And, we'll have to talk about that again. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about, the Big 12 versus the Big 10 a little bit too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we'll get the Pac-12 in there too. So
can't leave the Pac-12 out either. But I appreciate your time. Take care, man.
Thank you.
I want to thank Brett Peters for taking the time to speak with me regarding the Oklahoma State Cowboys and his Houston Texans. Good to see that I'm on the same page with him, especially when it comes to the excitement around Tylan Wallace and Rodarius Williams. Again, I think those are two of the more underrated prospects in this draft. Tylan Wallace should be a second-round pick, especially after running that sub-4 440, along with his ability to go up and attack the football in the air, fight through contact, play bigger than his size. And then Rodarius Williams, I think, is one of the better lockdown corners that we have in this draft. Really excited about the prospects for both of them at the next level. I think both are second-round picks. Sounds like we disagree a little bit with Tevin Jenkins and his draft stock. I think Tevin Jenkins is a first-rounder. I think this is a guy, despite the fact that you have guys from other more heralded programs, Tevin Jenkins, look, he's physical for a reason. He can play both sides, both the left and right tackle. Has some pretty good agility and pass protection as well. This is a guy, to me, I think is just an ascending prospect who's going to continue to get better and better. And then with Houston, sounds like for the most part we're in agreement. The defense needs to be addressed. A lot of those games where Houston lost late, leads late, you've got to be able to address, not only the front seven, but also the secondary. 3 out of my 4 picks are really on the defense. I honestly believe that Kylan Hill is going to be a nice complementary back to David Johnson, a 3-down back, a guy that can catch the football out of the backfield, spell Johnson when need be. And look, David Johnson has that injury concern, so there's a good chance you could potentially see, David Johnson, if he's down for any length of period of time, that Kylan Hill will be able to shoulder that load because he's proven to be the bell cow there for Mississippi State over his 4 years there with the Bulldogs. So once again, thank you, Brett. And we're going to continue this from a fan's perspective segment. And so in the next week or so, expect to get another installment of this episode. And next episode, I'll actually be taking a look at the running back position. So there are other running backs besides just Najee Harris and just Travis Etienne. Obviously you've got Javonte Williams, you've got Michael Carter, but look, there are guys late day 2 and day 3 who can make an impact, and we're going to sit down, we're going to take a look at those guys, and then we'll break everything down. So stay tuned for episode 23. I'll have that released here in the next couple of days. So until then, enjoy your week, everyone. This has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I've been your host, Greg Schutz. Take care, everyone, and until next time, I am out of here.